candlelighting tonight will be at 4:49. Mincha will be at 5. Remember that next week on Monday and Thursday we're at 6:05. We're getting close. Uh, Now for a very quick Devar Torah. This week's Parsha, we have the first Korban Pesach. The Jews are told to take a lamb, tie it to their door, and then to slaughter it and put the blood on their doorposts. And that way God would know who was a Jew and who was an Egyptian. And like I mentioned, God couldn't tell. God could figure that one out. The truth is, remember that there were two things going on at the same time. One was to get the Jews out of Egypt. But the more important aspect of the story is to get Egypt out of the Jews. The Jews were living in a very, as I mentioned, a very immoral society where they were slaves, and the danger was they would pick up from their masters their social mores. God wants to make sure that they will be free of those. So that what they did, and the reason for the lamb was a god in Egypt. So when the past Egyptian master saw his former slave sitting there with a lamb, he said, "What are you going to do with this lamb?" He says, "I'm going to take your god, I'm going to slaughter your god, and I'm going to eat your god." For a former slave to do that to a former master takes a lot of courage. And the idea was to break that bond. We have to remember that before the American Civil War, there was a society that would try to get former slaves to go to Liberia, to get them out of the United States, give them their own country in Africa, send them back to Africa, to their own country. They could rule themselves. And what did they do when they got to Liberia? They set up a society based on the plantation system where they had left. They took slaves among the Africans because that's what they knew. What God is doing here is getting the Jews to break that and saying, what you knew in Egypt is not what I want you to do. I want you to make a better society. I want you to be moral and ethical. So that was the reason for the whole issue of the Korban Pesach. Something to think about, Kaddish Rabbanim.